Well, welcome to everyone to the first meeting this year of a Standards Committee for Gedling. I particularly want to welcome Martin Thorpe, who is a parish councillor up in Bestwood, St Albans, and he's very welcome, and he was co-opted onto the committee. So I hope you'll find it not only useful but occasionally entertaining. But we try to keep ourselves, relatively informal, but nevertheless getting the business done. So very welcome to each and one of you. So we have Councillor Murray, Councillor Towsey Hinton, Councillor Mike Hope, Councillor Pat Bosworth, and Councillor Andrew Elwood in the front row, John Bagley in the row that you're in, Martin, and then we've got Rosalie Hawkes at the on the third row. So, and then to my right we've got Francesca, who's a monitoring officer here, and Kate, who I misnamed on my way in, and I apologise to her for that. But she is here to help us and so on. So, welcome each and every one of you. And our first formal item on the agenda then is apologies for absence. We've got Councillor Boyd Elliott and we've got Councillor Michael Payne, who I know about. Is there anyone else? No. And no substitutions? Okay, thank you. So second item that we have is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting we had. We did cancel one in November, so the last one was actually September 2021. Seems quite a while ago, of course, and lots of things have happened since, no doubt, in everybody's lives, but accuracy, first of all, on those minutes. I've had a quick check through and I can't see anything, but that doesn't mean there isn't. Otherwise, I would like somebody to move them as a correct record. Councillor Murray, thank you. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Elwood. So all those in favour, please show. Voting members. Any against? Thank you. That's approved. Abstentions? Yes. Is that because you weren't here? Yes, I thought so. Yes. Yes. All right. So declarations of interests, which we have to take, is item 3. Any declarations of interests? You haven't received any, Fran? No. That's okay. So onto the first sort of substantive report of the evening. The background to this of the recruitment of the independent person and reserve independent person. We sort of note that we didn't quite get the application for the reserve. If you remember, we put that out first, and then we didn't get round to interviewing because the people who did put themselves forward then withdrew. So we've now got that to take. So Fran, I don't know if you want to introduce this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, as Councillor Boyd has explained, as you may recall, we did go out to advertise for a reserve independent person. That was agreed at the last committee meeting. We had some interest in the post, but the applicant withdrew before the interview was established. So we had no one to interview. So we're now in a situation when we still have the vacant reserve independent person role. And also, as you can see from the report, our independent person appointment expires in July this year. So it made sense to go out again for both, because we will need to obviously recruit to that independent person post as well. And this was the process that we adopted back in 2017 when we went out for those two roles, because I think I can recall from back then we had limited interest in the reserve independent person role at that point as well. So we went out to recruit and we used applicants for the independent person posts and then put them into the reserve posts and so forth. So we felt that was a sensible way to move forward. We did advertise the Reserve IP in the Contacts magazine, and it was on our website. I think we perhaps need to look at a bit more of a targeted approach and advertising more widely to ensure that we perhaps get more engagement in applications for those posts. So as you can see, the recommendations are on page 9, that we commence a recruitment process for the role of independent person from the 11th of July 2022 for a 2-year period. The 2-year period is outlined in the report is the suggested period from the Committee for Standards of Public Life report, where they made reference to the fact that they felt any longer term appointments could give rise to potential conflict issues as independent persons working with the same, arguably, monitoring officer and members for long periods of time. And to avoid any sort of suggestion of that, a 2-year period may be more sensible. That is something that they have recommended is changed through legislation, but has not happened yet. But in line with those sort of suggestions, that's why the 2-year period is included in the recommendation. Similarly, the same period for a reserve independent person. The third recommendation is to agree the interview panel. So this was previously established as Councillor Boyle, Councillor Bosworth and Councillor Elliott. So they were established when we interviewed for the parish representative, and it was agreed that panel could continue for the reserve independent person, and now the proposal is that it continues for the independent person and reserve, with a delegation to myself in consultation with the chair to appoint alternative members if we find that for logistical reasons, one of the panel members simply we can't all get the same time and date. So that's why that delegation is proposed as well. So fairly straightforward report. As I say, we will look to perhaps do a wider, try and gauge more interest in the role and go out to a wider audience. Although Contacts does go to every household, obviously it didn't generate perhaps the response we'd hoped, but we will contact other colleagues at councils, district councils as well, to see whether their own independent persons or reserves might have an appetite for working with Gedling as well. So they're the proposals, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fran. I mean, first of all, to say that, you know, in terms of the panel and being able to get substitutes, I would say that's fairly important because, you know, part of the reason why I think there might have been a bit of a delay is because we didn't agreeing dates with more and more people is a bit like that. So I welcome that. One question I have to you, Fran, is whether it would be worth sort of widening the scope. So Contacts magazine supposedly goes out to everybody. It doesn't always come to my house, for example. So as I know, for whatever reason, could we put it on the Facebook feed? Could we put it out on Twitter? We're hiring, put it out just so we widen the net just a little bit, perhaps. But rather than me, you know, I welcome the 2 years and I welcome the dates there, and I think that makes it abundantly clear. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Bosworth, you have one.
Thank you. In the Contacts magazine, I must confess I've never noticed it. Does it explain what it involves, or is it just saying we need somebody, you know?
Microphone on. I can't recall exactly what was in the advert, but I think it was about a half a page, kind of, you know, in the Contacts advertising, just explaining, you know, are you interested in? I can't remember the exact wording, but it did sort of explain a little bit about the role. Yes.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you, Chair. Presumably, it doesn't have to. Our independent person doesn't have to reside in the borough. So I wondered whether maybe mentioning spreading the net wider would. I don't know whether there's anything in the city council area, because obviously anybody who lives in the city is fairly close to Gedling, isn't it? So that might be something worth pursuing. I don't know what publication they have in the city anymore, if they do, but just a thought.
I agree with you, Councillor Elwood. Point well made. You know, Broxtowe, the city, Rushcliffe, Newark and Sherwood, any of those sort of adjoining would seem to be appropriate as far as I was concerned, and perhaps maybe behind Councillor Elwood's point, as a point that I would make, is to perhaps see whether or not the equivalent of the contacts magazines in those authorities could actually put it in as well. I wondered, if that's practical for.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder whether it might be worth the monitoring officer's while contacting her equivalent number at, say, Newark and Sherwood, and just seeing what the position is with their reserve independent person, and saying, we've got a vacancy, and therefore we can potentially attract more applications that way.
We do have a monitoring officers group that meets. It's met less frequently recently because we've all been quite busy. But yeah, we do sort of tend to discuss items like that there as well. So it's certainly worth raising. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Bob.
I think that word of mouth is a good way. If we know people who might be suitable, if we spoke to them, I think that's a good way of passing things around.
Just checking that the 2-year sort of rolling recruitment programme doesn't prevent current incumbents reapplying should they wish to and being appointed.
It certainly doesn't.
It doesn't.
It certainly doesn't. No,
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for the discussion. Any other points? Otherwise, I'm going to move to John, did you want to say something? Sorry, I couldn't see behind you.
Some months ago, Rushcliffe went out to get fresh independent personal persons because their reading of the law is that I can't go on, of whom I would agree was really sensationally good. So there may be some out of the original long list, and I think I may have mentioned it to Fran. So I don't know whether you've contacted Sanjit at all, but they were very happy with the response they got in Rushcliffe.
No, thank you. I will, if subject to this all being approved, then I will be in touch with Sanjit about that. Thank you.
Just to put on record my thanks for your work thus far, John. Yeah, just to make that clear. Thank you. I need formally to have this report moved. Thank you, Councillor Towsey-Hinton, and Councillor Hope for seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, the next report we have before us, if you remember that we said in adopting our version of the Code of Conduct that we would ask Fran to look at providing guidance to go alongside it, which would then go on the website, etc., etc. So this is what item 5 is about, and there is an addendum, well, it's not an addendum, it's just an addition that should be in your pack as well. I'm sure there's a copy if you haven't got one, but this is about the guidance, Fran to move.
Thank you. You'll recall from the work that was done on the Code of Conduct review by this committee and by the working group, that it was agreed and a recommendation came through from the working group that there be a guidance document to support Gedling's Code of Conduct. Following on from that, I have prepared a set of documents. As noted in the report, there was a document in existence. It was some years old, and it was used. It was based on the old Standards Board of England guidance around the Code of Conduct under the old regime. But a lot of the information in there was still relevant. A lot of the principles remained the same and were brought through into the new regime. So it's an update of that document. It's also been written taking into account the Local Government Association's guide on the model code of conduct, and I have provided a link for that document in this report, because whilst we haven't adopted the model code at the moment, that guidance document is actually really quite helpful in terms of some sort of standard principles and, you know, some explanations around things that are in both codes. So that's quite a useful document as well to kind of read alongside this one. But this one is obviously very specific to what's set out in the Gedling Code. So I hope you find it helpful. I will be circulating it to all members and it will be made available on the website as well, because it's also useful for the public to see, and those who may wish to make standards complaints to kind of understand what the context of the code is and what might amount to a breach of it and what might not. So I hope you find it helpful. The recommendation is to approve the guidance. What I would ask is that if Chair is in agreement, that there is a delegation to me just to make sure that there's no typos or errors. I've read it several times, but just to make sure that it's absolutely correct in terms of its content. Obviously, I'm open to if there's anything you feel is missing or anything you would like further information on, then of course that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. So let's take this in two parts then. Is there any questions on the content, first of all, and anybody wants to raise any changes to what is in here? So we'll take that as part one, and part two, there's the recommendation as suggested to be amended, which I will take afterwards, so that we delegate to Fran the ability to correct minor mistakes and things and wordings that come up. So we'll take it in that way, but I'll open it up for comment or about the substantive content first of all. Martin.
Hi. So regarding circulation to parish councillors, what's the proposed plan for that with a guide?
So my intention was to email to parish clerks to make sure that it is circulated out to members.
As well as the thing being available on the website as well for people to have. Forgive me, I forget to press the button from time to time. Any other comments or questions? Well, okay. I mean, I would thank Fran for that piece of work. Given that there aren't comments, then what we need to do is, are members happy to approve the recommendation, which is on page 13 then of your pack, as amended, that we delegate authority to correct minor mistakes and typos and things? To move or to speak? To move. Can I have a second? Yes, Councillor Bosworth, thank you. Those in favour of adopting that recommendation as amended? Thank you, that is carried. Thank you. So that... Well, we now go on to is item 6, which is the Code of Conduct Complaints update. There probably is pretty much as we were, I think, on that. And as usual, just for Martin's benefit, what we tend to do here is that, first of all, Fran will introduce the report. If there are general questions, we do those first, so that if we do have to move to a closed session, that can be done at the end. So we're not coming in, people aren't coming in and out of the room, as it were. So that tends to be how we do this. Okay. So Fran, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So little to update, I'm afraid. So since the last meeting on the 2nd of September, there were 3 complaints outstanding at the last meeting. One was a new one to that committee and 2 outstanding. Those 3 complaints are still outstanding, so 2 have been referred, as outlined in the report, for investigation to external investigators, and one of them is awaiting an initial assessment to be completed. But I am confident that there will be an update for the next Standards Committee in relation to those matters.
Thank you, Fran. General points or questions I will take first if there are any. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I wonder whether the monitoring officer could give us a little update as to why the initial phase of that particular investigation has taken since September to, as it were, get to here without too much development, or is that something that is best discussed in closed session?
You mean the one with the initial assessment? It may be better to discuss it in closed session, yes. It's nothing untoward, it's just, it's taken what it's taken.
Any other general questions, first of all? Okay. Councillor Murray, do you wish us to go into closed session so we can deal with your question?
I think so, Chairman, if I may.
Fine. Out a piece of paper now. Okay. So formally, to move that under section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the ensuing report on the grounds that the report involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 and 2 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. That has to be formally moved, which I will do. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bosworth was quickest there. Those in favour? Thank you. So we are now in, we'll stop the streaming and we'll go into closed